Greetings, fellow lords and ladies. Royal Look at Game of Thrones Season 7 now continues on with The Spoils of War. So, beginning at Winterfell, Littlefinger meets with the recently returned Bran Stark. Apparently hoping to exploit disunity among the Stark children, he tries to ingratiate himself with Bran, Ned Stark's last true-born son and rightful heir to Winterfell. Littlefinger gives Bran a gift, the same Valyrian steel dagger that a cutthroat tried to kill him with while he was in a coma right after he was pushed from Winterfell's towers. Bran is still emotionally detached, however, from all of his visions as a new three-eyed raven, and is generally uninterested, only absentmindedly asking who the dagger belonged to. With a wry look, Littlefinger responds that, in a way, this is the question which started the entire War of the Five Kings. Bran's mother, Catelyn Stark, took the dagger south with her to King's Landing to try to find who it belonged to, convinced the Lannisters and the cutthroat to kill Bran, and left it there in Ned's possession, from when Littlefinger recovered it. Littlefinger tries to mutilate Bran by remarking on how much chaos he was to live through to get back to Winterfell. In response, Bran looks at Littlefinger and says, "Chaos is a ladder," quoting back Littlefinger's own words to him, which Littlefinger said to Varys in King's Landing years before, in which Bran couldn't possibly have been physically present to hear himself. Visibly unnerved, Littlefinger is startled by Mira Reed entering the room. He takes his leave of Bran, calling him Lord Stark, though again Bran insists he's not a lord. After Littlefinger leaves, Mira notices Bran's new wheelchair. Explains to Maester Wilkin built it for him. She tells him that she has come to tell him she's leaving and say goodbye. She promised to keep him safe, and now that he's back in Winterfell surrounded by his Stark forces, he's as safe as anyone will be before the coming war. Mira explains that when the White Walkers arrive, she wants to be with her family, so she's heading back to the Neck to assist the Crennog men. She says he doesn't need her in Winterfell anymore. Bran agrees with her with blank emotional effect, simply thanking her for her help. Mira becomes angry that this is all he has to say after everything they went through, when Hodor and Summer and even her own brother Jojen died for Bran. Bran responds that he really isn't Bran Stark anymore, but the three-eyed raven. He remembers the events of Bran Stark's life, but now remembers vast amounts of other accumulated memories from centuries upon centuries. Everything that once affected Bran Stark now seems distant and trivial to him. In horror, Mira cries that he died in the cave and leaves. Aww. Meanwhile, Arya Stark finally returns to Winterfell after leaving years before with her father, Sansa, and King Robert Baratheon's entourage, right after Bran's fall from the tower. Arya rides up to the gates and dismounts, but the guards don't believe her when she says she is in fact Arya Stark, convinced that Arya has been dead for years. Arya asks that they send word to Maester Luwin Roderick Castle, hoping either can prove her identity, but is unaware that they are both dead. The guards gruffly say that no one by those names is there, so Arya asks for Jon. The two say he just left Winterfell. Arya asks to Jon to Winterfell then, and they see a Lady Stark, who Arya realizes is her sister. They try to brush her aside, but she dodges them with her assassin's reflexes, and insists that one way or another she's getting in. So basically that if she is Arya, there'll be a lot of trouble for turning her away, and if she isn't, she won't last long in Winterfell anyway. Mildly concerned, they agree to at least let her in the courtyard, but insist that she stay put while they consult Sansa so they can disprove her identity. As soon as they take her eyes off her, however, she slips away. The two guards cuneiform Sansa and try to wave it aside as just some imposter. When they mention she asks for Luwin and Castle, Jesse realizes it must be Arya, and already knows where she has gone. Sansa finds Arya where she expected, in the crypts overlooking their father Ned's grave. They're happy to see each other, but so much has happened to both of them in the past few years that they are at first awkward, unsure of what to say. Arya asks if she has to call Sansa Lady Stark now, to which Sansa firmly insists yes, and laughs. They smile and hug, though still a bit unsure. Arya knows that Jon left her in charge and smiles when Sansa says that she hopes Jon will be back soon. He'll be both surprised and happy to see Arya, Sansa remembering how happy Jon was to see her when they were reunited. The sisters now look sadly on their father's grave statue. Arya says it doesn't really look like him. Sansa acknowledges everyone who knew his face well is dead. Arya points out they're not. Arya then asks if Sansa killed Joffrey, as everyone believes. She explains she actually didn't, though she wished she had. Arya remarks that he was always at the top of her list. This confuses Sansa, and Arya explains that she'd be keeping a list of everyone she was going to kill, in which they both laugh. Finally, Sansa asks how Arya got back, but says her only road wasn't a pleasant. But she only says her road wasn't a pleasant one. Sansa says hers wasn't either. They hug again, earnestly and warmly. Sansa then informs Arya that Bran is home too. Arya is elated, but her face falls and Sansa makes no mention of Rickon, and making realize that Rickon is dead. Sansa brings Arya to Bran in the Godswood, where he's lost in thought by the weirwood heart tree. Arya said to see him so paralyzed. Still somewhat attached at even the sight of Arya, he says he isn't surprised she's alive because he saw her at the crossroads. Arya's confused, and Sansa explains that Bran is having visions now. Bran says he thought Arya was going to King's Landing, and when Sansa asks why she would go there of all places, he gets startles them both by saying it's because Cersei's on her list of names, which you can't possibly be aware of their normal means. Sansa asks who else is on her list, but she says most of them besides Cersei are actually dead already. They then remark on the Valyrian steel dagger in his lap, and he explains that Littlefinger gave it to him, thinking he'd want it. Despite it being such a horrible keepsake that nearly killed him and indirectly set off a chain of events leading to his parents' death, he still listens and disinterested in it. Arya's confused as to why a common cutthroat would ever wear a precious blade of Valyrian steel. Bran matter of factly says that someone very wealthy wanted him dead and gave it to the assassin. Sansa acknowledges she doesn't actually trust the Littlefinger and never give anyone anything unless expecting something in return. Bran says that doesn't matter because he doesn't even want it. Instead, Bran hands it to Arya and says she can have it, seeing the dagger would be wasted on a cripple. Arya slowly takes the dagger and looks at it. Sansa, Bran, and Arya, the three remaining Trooper and Stark children, proceed back to Winterfell's castle courtyard together, with Arya pushing Bran in his wheelchair. Bran of Tarth and Podrick Payne see them from afar, all three of Catelyn Stark's surviving children reunited. Pod says Catelyn will be proud of Brienne, but she chides that she did next to nothing. Pod disagrees with my lady, and Ray starts to correct him that she doesn't consider herself a lady, then stops halfway and just thanks him for the compliment. Sometime later, Bran is going through a vigorous sword practice session with Podrick, knocking him down when he overextends himself. Impressed, Arya interrupts and says she'd like to spar with Brienne, the woman who beat the Hound at combat. Sansa and Littlefinger watch on silently from the walkway above. Brienne goes easy on her at first, but then Arya completely outmaneuvers Brienne using the water dance training she received from Sierra Farrell, augmented by her training with the Faceless Men. Arya shoots many openings that would be a killing blow if she wanted them to be. Surprised at such a young girl so skilled, Bran stops holding back, leading to a more grueling sparring session. Bran actually manages to knock a needle out of Arya's hand, but she simply switches to the Valyrian steel dagger she had in her belt. Arya uses speed and agility to compensate for Bran's strength and size to overwhelm her, until Bran actually manages to bring her brute strength to bear on a fast-moving target by landing a kick on Arya's chest that sends her falling down. Ultimately, they reach a stalemate, with each of them holding a blade to the other's throat. Bran asks Arya who taught her fight like that, and she simply responds, no one. Arya takes leave of Brienne, both mutually impressed, and Sansa looks down baffled and concerned at how her sister reached such a deadly skill level. Arya herself then looks up at an equally surprised Littlefinger with distrust. Oof. Anyway, in King's Landing, Queen Cersei Lannister is happy to learn of the gold taken from the Sag of Highgarden. The Lannister army at Highgarden is currently transporting the gold ahead to the capital, who remains in the north of the Reach seizing grain supplies. Cersei has Tycho stores of the Iron Bank of Braavos in her atrium, containing a large floor map of Westeros. Tycho explains that Cersei will use the captured gold to pay the Iron Throne's massive debts to the bank, and engages in overt flattery by saying that she is as cunning a military strategy as her father Tywin was, if not more so. Now that the Lannisters' old debts will mostly be paid off, and the Iron Bank's faith in them somewhat reassured by their recent military victories, Cersei wants to take out new loans to strengthen her position in the war, so she can finish securing control over the rest of the continent. Discusses Cersei wants to use the money to hire foreign sales route companies to bolster the depleted Lannister military ranks. Specifically, she reveals that she has had Qyburn make overtures to hire the best and largest private mercenary army in all of the free cities, the Golden Company. Tiago approves, commenting that it helped the bank to collect significant overdue loans. He also assures Cersei that the Iron Bank will be delighted to help her with these future endeavors once it receives the gold she is bringing them. Anyway, on Dragonstone, Daenerys Targaryen and Missandei make their way down to the beach to meet Jon Snow. Missandei is worried about Grey Worm because they haven't heard any news from Casterly Rock yet. Daenerys asks what happened between her and Grey Worm, and Missandei rallies says many things, smiling. Jon then leads Daenerys on a tour of the long-abandoned Valyrian dragonglass mine that Samuel Tarly told him about. The mine is ancient and impressive, used by the First Men long before the Valyrians came to Dragonstone. But this is not why Jon asked Daenerys to come. As they proceed deeper into the mines lit by torchlight, Jon shows her cave paintings they discover left behind by the children of the forest, filled with arcane magical symbols. Daenerys is stunned that the mythical children stood where they're standing now, thousands upon thousands of years ago, long before mankind ever arrived in Westeros. Jon says this is exactly true, leading her to another chamber. These are full of narrative drawings of the children and the First Men. Daenerys wonders if the children and First Men fought each other, but Jon then shows her ancient carvings of the White Walkers themselves, one of which Jon recognizes as an image of the Night King. Jon explains that the children of the Forest and the First Men only managed to drive out the White Walkers the first time during the Long Night because they chose to join together to fight off their own extinction, and that is the choice between Jon and Daenerys now. Jon asks Daenerys to ally with him to defeat the Night King. But Daenerys says that she will fight for him in North after he bends the knee. Jon tells her that the North won't accept a Southern ruler again after everything that has happened to them. Daenerys urges that they will if their king does. Ava's point in showing her the cave drawings was that she should swallow her pride and ally with him because the White Walkers are such a world-ending threat. By the same token, the North should submit to her because their survival should outweigh their pride. As they exit the cave to the beach, they're joined by Varys and Tyrion, with grave looks on their faces. They inform her that the Unsullied succeeded in capturing Casterly Rock, and then reveal the disaster which just occurred at Highgarden as Tyrion's military strategy fell apart. Casterly was only a feint, and the Lannisters didn't bother defending it, in order to make a surprise attack south in which they sacked Highgarden. Daenerys' fears and struggles to keep her temper in check, as now all three of her major allies in Westeros are gone, and all she has gained is a castle with no supplies. She snaps at Tyrion, blaming this cause a strategy for them losing Dorne, the Outer Islands, Yara's forces, and now the Reach. She then accuses Tyrion of wanting to use a light hand against the Lannisters because they're his own people. Tyrion says that they still have just enough ships left to literally shuttle the Dothraki from Dragonstone to the nearby mainland coast. Even lost of all her other allies, her combined Unsullied/Dothraki forces are still the largest single army in Westeros. Daenerys fumes that her vast numbers are useless if she can't feed them all, as that was the Reach's true strategic value. Daenerys decides she's had enough of clever plans, and uses the Dothraki and her dragons in direct assault to turn the tide of the war back in her favor. She desires to assault the Red Keep with all three of her dragons, intending to raze it to the ground with all of her enemies inside it. But Jon argues against such a course of action when she asks him his opinion. By bringing dragons back to life and breaking the back and slave trade, Daenerys has proven she might be capable of doing things differently. However, if she uses her dragons to build castles and burn cities, she'll be no different from any more of the tyranny of her Targaryen ancestors who came before her. Later, Jon and Davos Seaworth proceed back up to the castle. Davos remarks that Jon seems attracted to Daenerys. Jon says Daenerys has a good heart, but brushes Davos' observation aside, saying he doesn't have time for that, as he sees the Night King and his horde of the undead. Jon stresses the need to ally with Daenerys, because the North itself is largely depleted of soldiers after so many years of war and the Red Wedding. So they have maybe 10,000 soldiers or less left, to which Davos corrects fewer. They then run into Missandei again, O'Brien inquires why John's surname is Snow, even though House Stark has ruled the North for centuries. His father Ned and brother Rob both have the surname Stark, while he doesn't. John explains because his parents weren't married. He is bastard born as a result and uses the regional surname Snow, then he reserved for highborn northern bastards of nobility. Doubtless Missandei had similar customs for bastards on Noth, Missandei's birthplace. Missandei explains that marriage as such does not exist in Noth, so she finds the idea of a bastard to be quite an alien concept. Dowser remarks that it sounds liberating. He then asks why she left, to which Missandei finally realizes that she was taken by slavers, to be freed only years later by Daenerys. When Davos suggests Missandei simply traded one master for another, she considers that she and all the freed slaves serve Daenerys because they choose to. Davos keeps pushing, asking what happened to Missandei decided to return to Noth immediately. She responds that Daenerys would give her a ship and wish her good fortune. While they sail along the causeway, they see a lone ironborn ship approaching the island, the survivor of Yara Greyjoy's fleet. Theon Greyjoy himself and some of his men come to shore in a rowboat. As Theon disembarks, he is sent to see Jon Snow, whom he had last seen leaving Winterfell to join the Night's Watch. Since then, Theon had betrayed House Stark, a factor, albeit not the only one, that nearly destroyed House Stark and contributed to the deaths of two of Jon's half-brothers, Robb and Rickon. Jon is stunned for a moment as well. Theon walks up to Jon and asks him if Sansa, Jon's half-sister, is all right. Furious, Jon angrily grabs Theon by his coat and shakes him, remembering Theon's past treachery. Jon tells Theon that what he did to save Sansa is the only reason that he's not killing him on the spot and releases him. Visibly relieved, Theon informs him that Euron Greyjoy attacked their fleet and took Yara prisoner. He says he has returned to Daenerys. He says he returned to ask Daenerys' help in saving her. Euron Greyjoy tells him that Daenerys has just left. And finally, in the Reach, at Highgarden, Jaime Lannister coordinates the soldiers looking up the disposal war for transport. The sack of Highgarden allowed them to seize all of House Tyrell's substantial gold stores, which they sent ahead to King's Landing first, before moving on to securing grain shipments. Jaime procures a large bag of gold coins and gives it to Bronn as payment for his services. Bronn, however, is annoyed that this isn't the full reward he was promised, which included a wife from the nobility and a castle. He then half-seriously asks why Jaime doesn't just grant him Highgarden, as he needs someone to rule it. Jaime replies that they are at war. Highgarden requires significant upkeep, and Daenerys could arrive at any moment to take it. When Bronn remarks on the riches Jaime is packing up, Jaime says that they are not his, and the gold will be used to repay the Iron Bank. Bronn is not satisfied, and Jaime says that when they win the war, Bronn can choose of any castle he likes. He asks Bronn insists Randyll Tarly and Dickon Tarly to continue seizing grain supplies in the Northern Reach. Sometime later, Jaime Lannister's army has advanced much farther south and reaches the Blackwater Rush. Lord Randyll Tarly comes to Jaime and says they should hurry to get all of their grain wagons over the Blackwater River to King's Landing, so they'll be vulnerable if the formations caught on both sides of the river. Jaime agrees, but Randyll suggests flogging the stragglers to motivate them. Jaime urges that his soldiers fight well at Highgarden, however, and should at least give them a fair warning first instead of launching right into the flogging. Jaime and Bronn then encounter Randyll's son Dickon Tarly again. Jaime asks what he thought of his first taste of battle, and Dickon nervously claims it was glorious, only to then dejectedly admit that he was quite conflicted. House Tarly had been loyal vassals of the Tyrells for generations. He and many of the men they killed even hunted side by side with them. Jaime replies those men didn't deserve to die, but says the fault belongs to Olenna Tyrell because she chose to side with Daenerys Targaryen against Queen Cersei. Dickon the Hour confesses that the aftermath was horrible, particularly the stench of corpses. Bronn oblivious taunts that Dickon, a sheltered nobleman, finally learned that men empty their bowels when they die. Lannister army and wagon train continue east, approaching a river. Jaime and Bronn are then surprised to hear what sounds like distant thunder, until they realize it must be approaching cavalry. Jaime and Randyll shout for the soldiers to form up, but she managed to do it before the army crests over the horizon. Amasa would have the 100,000 strong horde of Dothraki cavalry, armed to the teeth and baying for blood. Bran advises that Jaime ride ahead to King's Landing, but Jaime insists he will not abandon his men. Bran only tells him that the Dothraki will quickly overwhelm the Lannister lines, and Jaime is too vulnerable as the commander to stay and fight. But Jaime insists that they have a chance if they hold. In an instant, Jaime and Bran look to the sky in awe and horror, as all their sound is drowned out by a massive roar. A roar not heard on the battlefields of Westeros in over a century and a half. Above the approaching Dothraki, the Lannister army sees a huge adult dragon part the cloud over itself and heading straight for their lines. Drogon, ridden by Daenerys Targaryen herself. Drogon outpaces the Dothraki, and at Daenerys' command, Dracarys, he blasts a torrent of fire through the Lannister ranks in a straight line from front to back, punching a hole in their formation. The high-mobile Dothraki light cavalry immediately sweep through it and wheel around to catch those parts of the Lannister lines in an enveloping move. The Lannister Charlie lines around Jaime and Randall, however, managed to rally under their leadership. The Dothraki charge into the Lannister lines head-on, but meet stiff resistance as their spear wall holds firm. Though they are outnumbered, the Lannister soldiers are better armed with heavy infantry and highly disciplined, battle-hardened veterans from years of war. Dothraki arch horses led off shots before changing into their ranks, but highly trained Charlie archers return fire, doing as much if not more damage as the Dothraki wear less armor. The Lannister army hold their lines for a time, but their enemy has the advantage of weight and numbers, as the tide turns slowly against them. The sheer tide of horses smashes through the shield wall, opening up gaps for those behind to charge through. For a moment it looks like Jaime might at least be able to hold the Dothraki to a standstill. Then Daenerys wheels out of the air again, devastating the Lannister formations. No longer trained to punch mere holes through their lines, she switches to outflanking the Lannister ranks, spreading a vast horizontal swath of men from left to right, obliterating much of the Lannister wagon train in the process. Men are flesh burned into nothing but ash, which crumbles to the touch, are quick to life with their own superheated armor as they struggle to rip it off, dousing themselves in the river. Nonetheless, Jaime manages to rally his remaining forces a second time, just by taking command of a group of surviving Lannister and Tarly archers and directing them to concentrate their fire on the dragon. Drogon might not be vulnerable to common arrow fire, but his rider is. If they managed to kill Daenerys herself, who was risked appearing in open battle, the entire war could end in a day, no matter their losses. Daenerys sees the attack coming, however, and banks Drogon up so the arrow volley harmlessly bounces off the armored scales on his belly. It then blasts the archer formation with fire. Jaime avoids the flames and is surrounded by enemies, but he manages to carve a path through the Dothraki with his very steel sword Widow's Wail to try to reach safety. It gets in trouble for a moment when he locks swords with the Dothraki dual-wielding two Araks, but Decataris stabs the Dothraki from behind, saving Jaime. Jaime commands Bronn to reach Qyburn's anti-dragon scorpion bolt launcher, as Jaime cannot fire it one-handed, which happened to have on hand and which was one of the few wagons not destroyed in the flames. After a moment's hesitation, Bronn fights his way back, killing several Dothraki until one cuts off his horse's leg and sends him sprawling, losing his large bag of gold in the process. Bronn continues to fight his way back on foot, chased by the same Dothraki warrior, follows him into the wagon he was looking for, just as him steer down the business end of a loaded scorpion. He barely has time to realize his fate before Bronn fires a bolt into him, flinging him 20 feet but pinning his corpse to another wagon. Bronn moves the scorpion as fast as he can, is only grew by a team of men, spots the dragon in the distance and fires, but misses. Daenerys is struck by a scorpion flying a few feet from her head, scans the battlefield, and spots Bronn and the scorpion as he reloads. Enraged at this direct attack on Drogon, Daenerys leads Drogon direct charge, diving straight down at Bronn on a scorpion launcher, waits for it to approach close enough that hopefully he will miss right before she is on top of him. Fires another shot, which impales Drogon's right shoulder. The mighty dragon lets out an awful screech and collapses in shock, helplessly dropping into free fall from hundreds of feet in the air. Bronn is elated, only for Daenerys to quickly bring Drogon out of the swell right before they hit the ground, which should have killed them both. The surviving Lancer soldiers then realize that not only is the dragon not dead, he is in a lot of pain and extremely angry. Hovering above the river, Drogon sets his sights on the device which did this to him and angrily sends a fire blast at the scorpion, destroying it in a matter of seconds after Bronn nearly jumps out of the way to safety. The dragon's armor scales are so tough that the scorpion bolt only managed to cause superficial damage. Nonetheless, the flesh wound grounds Drogon, and he howls in pain and fury, destroying the burning scorpion with a swipe of his tail. Any masses of enemy soldiers that are foolish or unlucky enough to get near him are burned alive. Daenerys dismounts and desperately tries to remove the scorpion bolt. By this point, the devastation caused by the dragon and the sheer number of Dothraki have totally ruined the Lannister lines. And with the scorpion destroyed, the last hope is gone and the battle turns into an utter rout and massacre. The Dothraki, who live for combat, show the fleeing Westerosi no mercy and cut them down gleefully on and off horseback. Tyrion Lannister views the battle from a distance of a nearby hill, along with the Dothraki commander Kohono, who remarks that Tyrion's people can't fight. Tyrion looks gravely on the battlefield, realizing these are facts his own countrymen from the Westerlands and House Lannister are being massacred. Men of Tyrion had previously fought alongside at the battles of the Green Fork and Blackwater. Many burning men and dying men rush to the river to try to extinguish the flames. Jaime, however, sees Daenerys is grounded and immobilized and realizes he still has one chance. If he can kill Daenerys even now, he can end her invasion. Jaime grabs a spear and charges his horse across the flaming battlefield to make a death throw for Daenerys as she tends to her dragon. Tyrion swears under his breath, calling his brother a fucking idiot, angry that he's going to get himself killed. Just as Jaime was nearly on top of Daenerys, however, Drogon notices him amidst the chaos of the battle. Shielding Daenerys behind his head, the dragon opens his mouth and his throat glows with the promise of fiery death. Just as Drogon unleashes the flames, Bronn rises and tackles Jaime off his horse, leaving their poor mouse to be consumed instead. They both fall into the river, where Jaime is weighed down by his armor and sinks beneath the waters, in danger of drowning. So anyway, let's take a look at some behind-the-scenes notes from this episode. The episode title is a reference to spoils seized following the sack of Highgarden. The alternate sector Clegane storylines do not appear in this episode. Arya Stark returns to Winterfell, her storyline merging back in with that one. In a post-episode interview after Stormborn, writer Brian Cogman stated that the way the producers conceptualized Season 7, after so many other seasons split amongst half a dozen disparate storylines, is that it is centered around 3 access points or sets of characters: King's Landing, Dragonstone, and Winterfell, plus a side adventure with Samuel in Old Town. King's Landing includes Jaime when he's in the Reach. Yara Greyjoy is part of the Dragonstone storyline, even in her own battle in the Narrow Sea, etc. The key point is that they used to conceptualize a bit as the Arya storyline, the Stannis storyline, etc. In Season 7, Arya doesn't reach Winterfell until this episode, but it's probably titled as part of the Winterfell storyline more than the Arya storyline. At this point, as it merges back in with that. Both Cersei and Missandei refer to the eastern continent across the Narrow Sea from Westeros by name as Essos, making this the only 6th episode to do so in nearly 7 full TV seasons after Stormborn 2 episodes ago. Essos is so large that people usually refer to major regions of it, such as the Free Cities or Slaver's Bay. Missandei talks about homeland Noth, but doesn't mention by name that it's usually considered part of the third known continent, Sothorios. Similar situations exist in the real world. Islands such as Sicily, Crete, and Cyprus are considered part of Europe because they lie closer to Europe than to Africa within the Mediterranean Sea, while Madagascar is considered part of Africa because it has the closest continent to it in the Indian Ocean. With a runtime of only 15 minutes, this is actually one of the shortest episodes in the entire TV series so far. Particularly notable given that most of the episodes in Season 7 have been extra length compared to prior seasons, due to the altered format of a shorter episode count. This episode's premiere broke the all-time viewership record for the TV series, already set by the season 7 premiere, thus the highest viewed episode for any HBO drama to date. According to Nielsen figures, 10.2 million people watched this episode live on HBO, surpassing 2.1 million who watched the season 7 premiere. This doesn't include streaming DVR figures, for which the season 7 premiere achieved 6.1 million viewers. AW.com speculates that this was due to trailers and leaked descriptions promising the major battle set piece featuring Daenerys riding her dragon into battle with her Dothraki against the Lannister army. Similarly, this episode also broke the day after side visit numbers set by the season 7 premiere, which up until this point had been the third highest of 4.2 million. This episode surpassed over 4.6 million site visits to the wiki. The second highest by this point is The Door, the episode that Hodor died, with 4.8 million, and of course the season 6 finale, The Winds of Winter, which jumped to 9.1 million site hits, possibly due to the reveal of Jon Snow's real parentage. Yeah, that could possibly be true, so yeah. So I really do like this episode, and it's nice to see that Arya, Sansa, and Bran are all back at Winterfell now, so that's good. So, yay! So overall I give The Spoils of War 5 Iron Thrones out of 5. Well, and tune in as we till the next episode, Eastwatch. So, until then, remember everyone, winter is coming.